Well, welcome. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Danny Lichtenfeld, hottest ticket in town, evidently. Thank you. Sorry we don't have more space and more seats, so thank you those of you who have chosen to stand. Really excited and honored to be able to present Andy Reichsman tonight, talking about this incredible family story of reclaiming artwork that was taken during World War II. When Andy found out that this artwork was going to be coming back, I think at some point in there you contacted me to talk about like how do we ship artwork from Europe or store it temporarily or something. And I was like, I couldn't believe this story I was hearing. And pretty soon we decided this would be great to share this story with neighbors and friends and our community. Wonder if anybody else would be interested. Lo and behold. So welcome Andy Reichsman.
Thank you. Let me say that I am completely shocked to see this overflowing room full of friends, family, and people I don't know. But I'm very happy you're all here, and I hope I live up to your expectations for my talk. So I'm going to start by introducing you to the people who populate this story. And on the screen at the moment, you will see my father, Franz Reichsman. He was a doctor, and he lived in New York, and he moved to Marlboro in the 80s, and that's part of the reason I'm here tonight. For the sake of equality, this is my mother. She has very little to do with this story, but she was very instrumental in my existence, so she's included. Next, this is my grandfather, Andy Reichsman. You'll see him, he's in an army uniform because he fought with the Germans in World War I. And he was a war hero, and in fact, he was called Sir Andy Reichsman for the rest of his life. You'll notice that he liked being photographed in his uniform. This is him again. Next, you're going to see my grandmother, Frida, who was a great beauty. She was supposedly one of the most beautiful women in Croatia, so I'm going to take that to be the fact. This is one of the most important people in this story. This is my Aunt Danica. We'll be hearing a fair amount about Aunt Danica in this story tonight. This is the store that my grandfather owned. D. Reichsmana Sina. Sina means son. And I believe that Dane was the son because his father started the store and he inherited it. You'll notice in the background, hang on, I'm going to get my little pointer here. That is the Đakovo, Croatia church. So back to my father. This is Frida, my grandmother, with my father as a baby. And next we have, again, the uniform, never-ending uniform. This is also my father sitting on the table. Now, my grandfather had a first marriage, and his wife unfortunately died. They had had 2 children, the 2 boys, Vlado and Velko, who are on either side of the picture, and my father is in the carriage. Again, my father, and then last, this is, my father's the very, very well-fit young man, and these are the brothers, and that is Aunt Danica. Okay, now let's get to the story. So my father was born in Vienna. Although they lived at the time in Croatia, it was very common for women to go and have give birth in Vienna. So my father was born in Vienna. And eventually the family moved to Vienna and lived there for a while, and Dane, my grandfather, would commute from Vienna to Jakovo, which was a pretty long trip. He did it every few weeks, and eventually I think he got tired of it. But in any case, my father went to school in Vienna. And the family moved back to Croatia around his junior year of high school. So he decided to stay in Vienna and continue at school. And he experienced some of the anti-Semitism that was prevalent in Vienna at that time, both from fellow students and from even members of the faculty. So he graduated, he went back to Croatia, and he decided to go to medical school. So he enrolled in medical school in Zagreb, and he had a little bit of a problem, which is that he didn't really speak Croatian, because even though they had lived there some of the time, his mother was not interested in learning Croatian, so in the household, they spoke German. So he spoke German. So he sat in his classes with two textbooks, two books. One was his textbook for the class, and the other was a German-Croatian dictionary. And he would look up words frantically while they were teaching. Okay, so after a year of that, he decided, I'm tired of the dictionary. So he went back to Vienna in order to continue medical school. Now, he was an excellent student, and he worked very hard. He always passed his tests. And at the end of his time, there were two tests that he needed to take, and they were not very important. One was legal medicine, and the other was hygiene. And he just thought these were, very unimportant, and he didn't bother to study for them. To his shock, he failed both tests. Now, if he had passed the tests, he would have gone home to Croatia and everything would have been fine, but he did not, so he had to wait 2 months in order to retake the tests. One night, he was at dinner, and the Gestapo came and arrested everybody in the house, the people he was with and him. And he protested. He said, I'm a Croatian citizen. This is an illegal arrest. You have no reason to arrest me. And they said, well, you'll get out when you get to the prison. So he went to the prison, and he was not let out. And in fact, he spent 2.5 months in jail. So now, I am going to play for you. My father recorded his life story for us in like 1982. And we lost the tapes. We had 5 copies of the tapes, one for each of me and my siblings, and somehow they all disappeared. And then my brother found 3 of them in his basement. So we got them, we digitized them. So you're about to hear my father's voice telling about his, just briefly about his time in jail.
And so time went by, day after day, in a very monotonous and at the same time frightening way. The frightening thing was that we all, even I, had the feeling, having gotten into this mill that dealt with human beings as numbers, that there might be no way out. But time passed, spent by then 2 or 2.5 months in prison, and I figured out that very soon the end of the examination periods would come along, so I decided to write a letter to the Gestapo, telling them just that particular predicament I was in as a Yugoslav citizen. Only 5 days after I'd written the letter, I was taken to Gestapo headquarters, and there I was interrogated by 2 Gestapo agents who were quite formal, not unfriendly. They told me that I would be released at once. Then I was free. I registered at once for the exam. A few days later, I graduated, so I packed my things as fast as I could and took the train to Zagreb without any difficulties or complications, and arrived home. It must have been sometime in June of 1938.
So he wrote a letter to the Gestapo, and it worked. I mean, it's just pretty unbelievable, and I'm very grateful that it worked. So around this time, my grandfather went to see some art in Zagreb, and he purchased 2 paintings and 8 lithographs. My father tried to get his family to leave Europe. He said, look what happened to me in Vienna, it's happening all over Europe, get out of here. But his father was so intent that as a war hero for the Germans, he would never be bothered by the Germans. He was safe, he felt. Unfortunately, he was wrong. So as it turns out, in 1941 or 42, the 2 half-brothers to my father, Vlado and Velko, were murdered. I don't say killed, I don't say passed away, I say murdered in a concentration camp in Croatia. My grandfather and my grandmother were taken from that concentration camp in Croatia to Auschwitz, where they were murdered in April of 1944. So we now turn to Danica. This is a picture I took of Danica. On the far side, that's Danica as I photographed her, and she's holding a photograph of herself as a younger person. So here's the story about Danica. I met Danica in 1972 when I was 18 years old. I was in England because my father had a sabbatical at Oxford University. And my sister and I were both visiting, and we went to London to visit Aunt Danica. And we ended up going to a movie, and we ended up at a double feature. And between the movies, we were having a chat, a conversation, and I said something. I don't know what I said, but she bit my head off. I mean, she just chewed me out, and in the most kind of humiliating way. And I said to myself, I never want to see this woman again. I want nothing to do with her. Forget it. 6 years later, I came to London to go to art school. And I thought to myself, oh, geez, you know, it's my father's sister. I've got to see her once, and that'll be it. I'll see her, and I'll get the hell out of there. So I went to lunch at her house, and, you know, I was going to art school. And she was just so thrilled that I was in art school because she had always fancied herself an artist. And she felt that this was a genetic confirmation of her artistic ability. So she was just thrilled that I was there. And we had a wonderful time. And I ended up seeing her probably every couple of weeks. And I actually, at one point, I bought a motorcycle, and she would hop on the back of my motorcycle, and I'd drive her off to a classical concert, and we had a great time. And after that, I got to London a few times, and anytime I was in London, I would see Danica, and you know, it was wonderful. And we corresponded and all kinds of stuff. So Danica, for some reason, she was absolutely adamant that she retrieve the possessions that had been stolen from my grandparents when they were taken and murdered. And among the things that she wanted to collect, there were 2 paintings, which I will show you now. This is Andre Derain, and it's Still Life with Bottle, approximately 1904, just before his Fauvist period, but it's a beautiful painting, which I love. And then the other painting is by Maurice Vlaminck, a landscape, which I think is really also gorgeous. There was also everything from their household. They had a samovar, they had a desk set, they had various bronze statuettes and things like that. And she went to Croatia virtually every summer to try to get the art back. And she would meet with government officials, she would meet with people at the galleries. She even bribed the head of the modern gallery, which is where the paintings were. She bribed him with a Degas charcoal, which I really wish I had, but it apparently, it evaporated with him. So, you know, she tried, and she just never could manage to get the art. Well, she passed away in 2001. And in 2002, early 2002, I was notified that I was a beneficiary in her will and that she had bequeathed all the artwork to me, specifically me. So the law firm felt obliged to try to get this art. So they started pursuing the art, which was great because it meant that I didn't have to pay anybody to try to get the art. And they tried, they hired a lawyer in Zagreb, Mr. Rubčić, and he was working and trying to succeed, and he spent many years. And eventually, the law firm in London said, we can't pursue this any further. We give up. Part of the reason that they gave up was because the art was donated to me tax-free, which meant that the estate was going to have to pay the taxes. And they had no idea how much the taxes would be, so they couldn't distribute the will. So they said, eventually they said, forget about it, we're out. So Mr. Rubčić and his firm continued, regardless. In 2008, I was notified that I needed to go to Croatia to appear before a judge. So I traveled to Croatia with my son, Ethan, and we went to the court. And, actually, before we went to the court, we met Mr. Rubčić, who was a terrific guy who I just really liked, and Ethan liked. And he had a great use of the English language. He told us that the party that ran Croatia at the time was called the HDZ. And he said, we referred to them as the H disease. So you get a sense of what they were like. And he told me that I would have to, at one point he said, I said, am I ever going to see the art? And he said, oh, you'll get the art, you're young. He said, I probably won't see it, but you'll probably get the art. And I didn't believe him. I certainly didn't believe him. So, he also said, at one point he said about getting the art, he said, don't light the barbecue before you catch the rabbit. So that was his, I mean, he was pretty good with English. Anyway, so I went before the judge, and the judge, he apparently only wanted to know, was there anybody else who could make a claim to the art besides me? So I said, well, I have 4 siblings, and I have 5 cousins in Israel. And he said, well, you need to get a signed release from every single one of them, and then it'll be clear that you're the sole inheritor. So my siblings were very obliging, and they just filled them out. One of the Israeli cousins was sort of an outsider type character, and he just wasn't interested in signing. I asked his siblings, and they said, that's the way he is. So I believe I actually called him, and I spoke to him on the phone, and I convinced him to sign the papers. So he signed it. I had all 9. I handed them in. That was 2008. Where are we? Let's see. So at that time in 2008, I actually asked Senator Leahy to write a letter, which he did, which said, you know, I and my colleagues in the Senate are following this case with close interest, and, you know, we'll be following the course of events. That didn't seem to work so well, because that was 2008. I also spoke with Peter Galbraith, who was the ambassador to Croatia. And whatever he said, I have no memory, so I don't think it played a big factor. So then, let's see, where are we? Hang on one second. So unfortunately, a couple of years later, Mr. Rubčić died, which was a great disappointment to me, and I sort of thought maybe that was it. But there was a woman in his office named Monia Matic, and she carried on from 2000, well, this was probably 2011 or 2012. So, let's see. Oh, right, so having come back from Croatia, I developed a really brilliant way to get the art, and I figured it all out. So what I was going to do was I was going to travel to Croatia with some cohorts, and we were going to go to the museum, and we were going to steal the art. And then we would run back to our Airbnb, and I would change into women's clothing, including a full hijab. Oh wait, actually before that, before we stole the art, we were gonna drive into Slovenia, which is the neighboring country. And then I was gonna swim across the border, which is a river, and rejoin them as they entered Croatia. And then I would have been established as being in Croatia. So then we would steal the artwork. Then they would drive me back to the river, and I would either swim or I would take a canoe and cross, and they would join me, and we'd be scot-free with the art. And I had plenty of friends who wanted to join me on that trip. And in fact, one of them said to me not that long ago, said, gee, I guess since you have the art, I guess that the heist trip is off. And I said, yeah, I'm afraid it's not going to happen. So, so then the lawyers, you know, it was a big crazy back and forth. First, the court said that I had to prove that we owned the paintings. And then they said to the Modern Gallery, you have to prove. I was very relieved. They wanted the gallery to prove that they had ownership. Then they flipped it back again, and they wanted us to prove. So this went on for a long time. And in 2016, hang on a second. She died in 2001. And this was 2016, so 15 years later. Somehow the lawyers had lost my email address, because I think we had had some correspondences at some point with Mr. Rubčić. But they couldn't find my email address, so they Facebook Messengered me. And I don't use Facebook Messenger very much, so I didn't see the note for quite some time. Eventually, I saw it. And it said, we're writing to you because we need a power of attorney to continue the case. And so I sent them a response. Whoa. So this is my response to them. I only got this message today. Mr. Rubčić warned me that winning this case would be very hard for many reasons, including government corruption and the likelihood of having to pay bribes. When the court reversed its position, saying that I had to prove ownership instead of the museum proving ownership, that was the last straw. I can't invest money into a very unlikely outcome. You said I would need to pay the court and pay you some fee to continue, and that was the end for me. So that was my psychological position in 2016. I said, this is just, you know, it's a funny story, whatever, but there's nothing going to come of it. So 2 years passed, and they emailed me again, and they say, we need the power of attorney, and it would be a shame to give up after so long. So I sent them the power of attorney, and they carried on. So let me just think for a second about where we're going here. Actually, some of this I think I need to read. It's a little complicated. Hang on a second. Hang on. Oh, actually, there's a little side story I want to tell before I get to that. When we were in Croatia, Ethan and I were interested in seeing the house that my father had lived in. Mr. Rubčić had an address, so he gave us the address, we went to that address, and it looked completely wrong. My grandfather was very wealthy. I expected to see a mansion. This was a very modest place. And we saw a fellow, and we called to him, and he spoke a little English, and he explained that they had changed the name of the street, and the house we wanted was about 3 blocks away. So we trudged over there, and sure enough, it was a beautiful mansion, and we thought, wow, this looks right. So we knocked on the door, and a gentleman and his wife and a couple of kids came out, and they were very interested to meet us. Now, we had been doing some filming because we thought maybe we'd make a little documentary about this, so we said, is it okay if we film you? And he said, no, you can't film me. And we were like, why can't we film you? And he said, well, I was in the Croatian army in the war between Bosnia and Croatia, and I can't be pictured. So we didn't photograph him, but he did tell us a story that confirmed to me that this was the right house. When the house eventually was taken over by the Yugoslav, then Croatian government, they put people in the house. There were 5 or 6 families, 55 people were living in the house. The kitchen was one apartment, and the living room was another apartment. So this guy decided he wanted to buy the house. So he paid off He paid off each one of the occupants, but he also flew a woman down from London and wined her and dined her and paid her $10,000 and got her to sign a piece of paper. Now, my aunt had told me a story about some nut who had flown her to Croatia and wined her and dined her and paid her $10,000. And I was like, this is it, and this is the guy. By the way, he showed us around the house and showed us everything, and he showed us his little den where he had his gun collection. And on the wall were photographs of his regiment from the army, and 90% of the people in the picture were wearing ski masks to completely obliterate the being recognized. So you get the idea. Now, hang on a second. Where is that? Oh, no, where is it? Bear with me a minute. I'm missing a page. Anyway, what basically happened was the Croatian government initially claimed that the paintings had not been stolen by the Nazis, but they had come to the Yugoslav government, and somehow, I don't know exactly why that mattered, but they were claiming that for that reason, we weren't entitled to restitution. So the lawyers went back into the archives and they pulled up proof that the Nazis had taken the art. Then they claimed that the paintings were Croatian national treasures, which is interesting because neither painter had anything to do with Croatia whatsoever, and yet these were Croatian national treasures. So apparently the lawyers tell me that on December 24th, 2020, they won the case. And supposedly they informed me. I have no memory in 2020 of being told that I had won the case and that I would be getting the art. So I don't know, some years passed, and eventually in 2023, the lawyers called me and said, come get the art. This was my moment of, oh my gosh. Although I will say, I said to people at the time, I'm going to Croatia to get the art, and maybe I'll get the art. Actually, you'll see that in a minute. But where are we? So I need a breather for a minute. It turned out we needed to get the paintings authenticated. The Derain, there's a committee called the Derain Committee in Paris, and they meet quarterly. They were meeting in June, and we couldn't make it in June, so we decided September 25th was their next meeting. So we needed to get the art, that piece, to Paris by the 25th. So we flew to Croatia. This is my son, my daughter, my wife, and I flew to Croatia on September 14th. And we met with the lawyers the next day, and so I'm going to show you a videotape. Once I was there, within a couple of days, I was interviewed on Croatian national television because I was the first person to ever receive art that was stolen in the war from the Croatians. So it was pretty big news. So they interviewed me. From there, in this little video clip, we'll see Monja Matic, my lawyer, and she'll tell a little bit about the situation. And then we'll see us collecting the art from the various museums. The paintings were at the Modern Gallery. The lithographs were at the graphics cabinet of the Museum of Arts and Sciences, and the housewares, the household belongings, were at the Museum of Arts and Crafts. So let's see what we see. Here we go.
Mr. Reichsman, thank you for joining us and welcome to our program.
Hvala vam što je
Vrlo sam ponosan što ih sada mogu vratiti i to je ono što je najvažnije.
My Croatian is really strong.
Možete li mi...
You know, I think of my grandfather, Andy Reichsman, who I never met, and his wife, Frida Reichsman, who I never met. Was unable to meet because they passed away. And you know, I think these were the things that they owned, and somebody came into their house, kicked them out, took all their possessions, and I'm very proud to reclaim those.
So 20 years ago, I got this case, and we found all arts, where they are, in which museum.
Yeah.
Normally, as you were in a will.
Yes.
You were in a will, and everything should be finished in, I don't know, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, but they made an objection, and that's why the whole 20 years, that's why the whole this case was so complicated and long lasting. Hopefully at Monday we'll get
We'll see.
and we won't have any problems. Yeah.
I always tell people when I'm telling them the story,
Yeah.
I say we're going to Croatia to get the art,
Yeah.
and maybe we'll get the art.
This is also the file. This is also the part of the file. But
Wow. Wait, how much is?
from here to here.
SIPS Jurga. Go to Street View.
Probably that.
So that's the first stop. Hello.
How are you?
How lovely.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
I don't know. Ja sam Monja, drago mi je. Družica Pepela. Samo ste se upoznali, razgovarali. Da, ja mikrofona, da. Ne. We don't have a permission to film.
Is very thin, and because of that, it was probably more damages.
Visoka 8th Pilgrim. Oh, let's go back and see where the flock it is.
At the Museum of Arts and Crafts, we are supposed to collect the household items.
I'm director of the museum of
Congratulations.
You can take two things, I think, this and something
Yes.
else.
This one and this one.
I see.
Yes, I have the expert license. The other one will wait.
That is a 4-minute and a 5-minute walk. There we go.
You're just facing it up the wrong way. That white building.
Oh, this is where we are. That's Nikola Tesla.
Da, mi smo već malo sve su lokacije gore na Gornjem gradu, pa neke s autom, neke pješki.
Tihana, Andy Reichsman. Yes,
So
yes.
paintings are here.
Okay.
You are here.
Oh, these are the paintings.
Yes, that's one.
Wow.
In here, yeah. You and not after 70 years, someone else.
Yeah, right.
Beautiful. A vi ste napravili sa zavodom sve?
Da,
što je trebalo, okej, ja sam dao mišljenje.
It's also very beautiful and very good condition.
Wow. You mean in my house?
My apartment.
Your apartment in our house?
Yes.
Okay, maybe. We'll see.
Alright, I'll take a maybe.
We could live with that for a while. I just want to say that I accept these works in honor of my grandfather, Andy Reichsman, my grandmother, Frida Reichsman, my half-uncles, Vlado and Velko, and Mikhail Reches, who's a cousin in Israel, and his children. And I accept these in their honor.
Maybe one picture fits in it, or not.
If it starts raining.
Oh my God.
How we got this, I have no idea.
Hey.
I'd like to propose a toast in honor of our relatives.
Yeah, Danica.
Danica and Donna and Frida and everyone who we have
And Grandpa Franz.
and Grandpa Franz. We have successfully
Yes.
retrieved what once was theirs. Okay. So now, the next step in the journey was to get the paintings and the lithographs out of Croatia. So there was some work to be done. The Derain needed to go to Paris, the Vlaminck and the lithographs had to go to New York. We originally thought that the paintings are not huge. The paintings are something like this, I would say. And we thought, oh, we'll just put them on the plane with us. We'll put them in the overhead compartment, or we could buy the seat next to us on the plane. It turns out you can buy the seat next to you for a musical instrument, but Air France tells us you can't do that for a painting or a work of art. So we weren't able to do that. So then we thought about taking a train, which was 20 hours and a lot of complicated, maneuvering. So we ended up hiring an art shipping company, and they flew the paintings from Croatia to New York, the one painting, the Vlaminck and the lithographs. And the Derain, they came up with the way of bringing it to Paris. They had two guys drive 14 hours to Paris with the painting. Now, I knew one friend in Paris, and I had called him, and he said he would take the painting over. So they delivered the painting to him, and Kate and I, my wife and I, were supposed to collect the painting from them the next day, but we had gotten COVID. So we couldn't travel to Paris in time to get the painting. Furthermore, we were supposed to, when we were in Croatia, we were supposed to go to Đakovo to see the town, see the Reichsman building, which everybody knew of. They said, if you say your name is Reichsman, everybody will know who you are. And the mayor was going to show us all of this. And we had to cancel because we had COVID. So we're going back. Anyway, so Ethan collected the painting in Paris, and we showed up just in time to go to the Derain committee. We dropped the painting off. We came back hours later, and in fact, it was authenticated. And we said to them, you know, we're interested in finding out what the paintings are worth. Is there somebody we could go to? And they said, go to Art Curiel, which is an auction house in Paris. So we called them up. We were leaving 2 days later. We said, can we possibly bring something for you to look at tomorrow? And they said, yes, yeah, bring it by. So we brought it by, and we left it there for a few hours, and then we met with them. And they said, we're very interested in selling these paintings. And I said, can you tell us what it's worth? I had been, you know, I'd been arranging in the shipping. I had to put insurance on the paintings. So the Derain, I guessed maybe 80,000 pounds or euros, and the Vlaminck, I guessed 40,000. So I said, what are they worth? And he said, we think the Derain will sell for between 300,000 and 500,000 euros. And the Vlaminck will sell for 100,000 to 150,000 euros. And my jaw just dropped. I mean, hit the floor. Anyway, then eventually, a long time later, the Derain made it to New York, and the paintings are both in New York. And that is the end of my story, except for questions and answers. Where the hell is it? Oh, there you go. Yeah. Hopefully it was me that was doing the buzzer. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, and if you do have questions, I'm also going to repeat them so that people can hear. And I think this would also be an okay moment if anybody's like ready to get up and go. You shouldn't hesitate. Those doors should be open there, and feel free.
So who has a question? Yes.
The question was, where in New York are the paintings now?
The paintings are currently at Phillips Auction House on Park Avenue in New York. And they will be put up for auction on May 15th. And some people may wonder, why am I selling the paintings? Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, we live in Vermont. We heat our house often with wood. The temperature goes up and down. The humidity goes up and down. The insurance company said we needed to have a very substantial insurance policy, that we needed cameras and security devices, and it's just beyond my ability. And I don't think the paintings would last very well in our house. Next question.
Thank you for sharing such a human and such a humane account. It's such a remarkable story.
Thank you.
You have done your grandfather so proud.
Thank you. And Donitsa. It's really Donitsa spent 50 years, and I'm very happy that I managed to pull off what she never was able to.
It's so inspiring. I do have a question.
Yes, what's your question, sir?
I don't understand why this law firm continued to pursue this investigation for over 30 years.
Andy, I'm going to reiterate.
Yeah.
The question was, why on earth did this law firm continue to pursue this case for 30 years or so?
Well, I guess I would say that between Mr. Rubčić and Monja Matic, they had a case, and they knew that they were right, and they knew that I was entitled to the work, and they were just going to keep going until they won.
Were they paid at the conclusion?
They sent me a bill in around, I don't know, 2018 or something like that for $1,400 for like 15 years' work. And since I've paid them a couple of $1,000s more, they will receive a tidy sum when I sell the paintings.
Oh, nice.
They don't know it yet, but they will. They will. Yes.
The question was, did you ever find out why your aunt bit your head off that time? What you said that was so offensive?
You know, I never asked her, and B, because I never wanted to relive the moment. I wanted it to go away. I have no idea. Although, you know, she was a prickly, neurotic difficult person. My father always described her as difficult, and she was difficult. But once you were in her good graces and you were going to art school, you were in like Flynn. So.
Do you have any idea about the documentation that was needed to prove that your family was the rightful owner of the paintings?
Well, I will say one thing. The fascists were always good record keepers. So there was documentation in the archives somewhere in the Croatian government that the lawyers went through, and they found, I mean, my grandfather had actually, right before he was taken, he gave the artwork and maybe the household possessions, I'm not sure, to an employee who was not Jewish. And that person held on to it for the war. And when the war was over, I believe he actually voluntarily handed it over to the government, saying this belonged to the Reichsmans. I believe that's how it went. Kathy.
Through this process, has anybody else come forward and with similar claims and tried to do similar reclaiming?
There have been a number of cases over the years. I believe Klimt was one case, but there are a number of people who have come forth. Actually, Melanie was telling me that her family has received restitution from Germany. Nobody has yet gotten anything from Croatia but me. That may change. When the interviewer at the national network asked me, what would you suggest to people who have a similar situation as you? I said, call my lawyer, Monia Matic. She will fight to the end. And hopefully she's getting a lot of business out of it. Anybody else?
Yeah, Laura.
I was wondering if Phillips told you why the Derain is much more valuable than the Vlaminck, because frankly, personally, I like the Vlaminck better.
Could you hear over there? I'll repeat in case anybody can. Curious why Phillips said that the Derain is worth much more than the Vlaminck, because at least one critic here likes the Derain much more.
I don't disagree with you. I think the Vlaminck is really special. It wasn't only Phillips that said that. Christie's said that, and Art Curiel said that. I believe Derain has a higher appreciation from the art world, and that's all I can think. I think he just commands a higher number.
Tom.
Yeah. Hi, Tom.
Your grandfather in 1944 was killed.
Yes.
And in 1938, up until then, he had been in the business. It was not until the end. His business was his father's business, your great-grandfather?
Yeah.
And you know what the period of that was and how old your grandfather was when he died?
You know, I know very little about my great-grandfather. I know that what I was told was that the family had emigrated from Germany to then Yugoslavia sometime in the late 1800s. And apparently they moved because a whole village or community was moving, and they were the shopkeepers who went along with them. And you know, I don't even know my great-grandparents' names, so I can't tell you much about that. But
Was the question, when did your father leave Croatia?
and my aunt.
When did your father and your aunt leave Croatia?
I think my father left probably in '39. Possibly 1940. Danica, a little after that, I believe, maybe 40 or 41. But you know, 41, they were put into a concentration camp, so it had to be before 1941.
Did you ever get a complete list of all the artworks in the Zagreb house, and are you sure that everything is accounted for?
I have a list from about probably 50 or 60 years ago that lists every single item. It's in Croatian, so I can't really tell you what they all were, although I think I have a translated copy as well. You know, they just, I don't think anything's missing. There are quite a number of household items that are there. In fact, the Museum of Arts and Crafts wants to buy some of them from me and give me the rest. But that hasn't been confirmed by the Ministry of Culture, so I don't think I'll ever see anything from that. Well, anybody else? One last question. Oh, Neil?
Are you planning to make a whole film about this story?
Actually, my son is making a film. What you saw is 5 minutes or so of a trailer that they've made that tells the basis of the story, and they're trying to get funding to fund the film. But my son is now an aspiring filmmaker, so we'll see what happens. He also just took the LSATs as a backup plan. And he did really well. He's in the 97th percentile, 99th percentile. Anybody else?
How did the law firm prove that these had been taken by the Nazis?
Well, as I said, the fascists keep great records, and in the archives somewhere in Croatia, they found a document that explicitly said that. So that's what did it, I guess. It's a long, long story that the lawyer, you know, she wanted to tell the story about all the legal twists and turns, and she said, I can't explain it to you in English because my English isn't good enough. So she told us in Croatian, and then my son had it translated, and it's still pretty darn complicated. So,
well. Question is whether Phillips Auction House is doing a good job of telling this amazing story behind the auction of these two works, and whether that's maybe going to have an effect on the sale price.
You know, I had to choose which auction house to go to, and I had an interaction with the guy from Phillips, and I really liked him, and he actually said to me, I said, what is your commission? What is your charge? And he said, for you and for these pieces of work, we'll charge you nothing. There's no commission on my end. And I thought that was really nice of him to make that offer to me. And when I told Christie's that, they offered to match it. But, you know, Phillips had done it without, you know, somebody else having made the offer. So I felt like I wanted to stick with Phillips. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in auctions. You know, if you go to the Phillips website now, you can look at all the art in the May 15th morning auction. And I think we're number 171 and 172. And underneath each, there's a story about these were reclaimed from the Reichsmans, and they talk about the paintings and their various place in history and whatever. I have no idea. I sort of thought maybe there'd be more to it. I don't know. But we'll see. I mean, hopefully a lot of people show up and bid. So. Oh, no kidding. Wow. There you go.
Gordon was saying that he wishes his father, Lane Faison, had been here to hear this talk because Lane was one of the monuments men, one of the art historians who went over to Europe right after the war to begin to try to sort out where all this work had gone. And he also said what Andy's been saying tonight, which was that the Nazis were great record keepers, and that was, I guess, probably indispensable in terms of the work they were doing.
Great. I salute your father. Excellent. All right, I think maybe up.
What was this like for you emotionally? Like, I think he talked a lot about like all the facts and the steps of this process, but like, what was the ups and downs for you in this process?
The question is, what was this like for you emotionally? You kind of told us a linear story, but there must have been a lot of emotional ups and downs. And what was that like?
I would say I'm not that emotional. But no, I'm kidding. Yeah, it was moving, and you heard me in the interview say that you know, that I was reclaiming them in their honor, and that's sincerely how I feel, and particularly for Danica and Dane and Frida, I'm very happy to have the lithographs, and you know, I'm happy. So, and it was satisfying to, to see it. Thank you. Whew.
Andy, thank you so much. We'll all have our fingers crossed, and we'll watch online on May 15th.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.